we are at the final session of the Science and City at the Hyderabad Lit Fest. And we will be continuing the streak of health conversations in this discussion also. And if you paid attention to the last conversation, a lot was spoken about the number of infectious diseases that India faces and will continue to face, unfortunately. And that is a space where vaccines have really made a huge, huge, huge difference. India is the largest manufacturer of vaccines, and this conversation is going to take us through the history of this sector. Because we have a new book out there, which is called Vaccination, and we have the author Ameer Shahul with us. And we also have Dr. Varaprasad Reddy, who had made the first recombinant DNA vaccine company in India called Shanta Biotechnic, right in this city of Hyderabad. So with these two absolute amazing experts, we will be learning more about vaccines today. And moderating this discussion will be Dr. Kasturi Mahadik, who is the lead of the Center for Predictive Model Systems, CPHMS. It's a complex name. But basically, they're trying to move away from animal model systems to non-animal models, yet not compromise with the quality of biology research. So please welcome Kasturi, Ameer, and Varaprasad Reddy on stage.
Hello. Thank you for sticking around. This is the end of the day, and we are probably sitting between you and your ride home. So I promise you, we are going to make it worth your while. And like Somdatta so graciously introduced, I have two fantastic guests here to talk about vaccines and what they mean really to Hyderabad and to India. So just a brief segue, I've handed out copies of India's national immunization schedule. You'll see a small picture of the Shantavac vaccine below, and also Amir's book, Vaccination. In that list, you'll see that there are at least 8 vaccines which are administered in the first 9 months of life. And these are for diseases like tuberculosis, polio, hepatitis, measles, rubella, any amount. So today, India produces nearly all these vaccines in-house and distributes them not only within India, but across the globe, particularly known for its subsidized pricing. So today's conversation is all about this initiative that Dr. Varaprasad Reddy started out with, and the bold step taken in that direction, and also about Amir's history of documenting this journey and how he came across the fact that there is no single book talking about this. So many of you may also know that today is the day where they announce Padma Awards, and we have Dr. Varaprasad Reddy, Padma Bhushan awardee amongst us. Couldn't be higher pleasure. And we also have Ameer Shahul, who is not only the author of this book, but also another book called Heavy Metals. He has a background in public policy, and that has typically lent tremendously to his storytelling. And I'm sure we are going to talk much more about that today. So to begin with, Ameer, I don't know if you know about this, but our audience may know this, that there's a bus number 3 that runs from Afzalgura to Rajiv Gruha Kalpa colony here in Hyderabad. And along the way, it passes through an area called Barkatpura. And at that point, the conductor loudly yells, "Quarantine, quarantine." It took me reading your book to realize quarantine actually means quarantine. And the fact that this is derived from Ronald Ross's time in India and how he developed the vaccine, or he understood about malaria. So could you tell our audience about this fascinating story?
Yeah, you asked me to talk about Ronald Ross and his connection with Hyderabad and how he came about, noticing the Anopheles mosquitoes carrying acting as a vector for malarial parasites. So I think it's obviously it goes back a century, and it is also a great, honor for Hyderabad to be associated with someone like Ronald Ross, a century ago, more than a century ago, in fact. And in fact, in the book, I'm narrating how he came about, and noticing how he took the blood from a patient at at his hospital and tried to cultivate the mosquitoes, and feed the mosquitoes with the blood. And so and most of you know Ronald Rose is born in India, and his great grandfathers have been living in India, of course, as part of the British Empire. And those days, you could imagine the kind of movement, mobility, even from one place to other within India used to be a tremendous challenge. So, but despite that, scientists like Hafkin, another great scientist whom I'm talking about in the book, he and Ronald Rose used to be in regular touch. Obviously, through letters, you write a letter and reaches you after a week or 10 days or 20 days, and they used to exchange notes, and and also through the publication, the journals. You write an article in the journal, publish a paper in a journal, and someone respond to that, and that used to be a mode of communication those days. Much rather than the letter communication. And but you would be amazed to see that how in today's world we pick up a mobile phone and talk to the other scientist. If you're a scientist, and try to figure out how did you arrive at this conclusion, or what's the rationale behind the data. But I think century ago this used to be a very time-consuming process. Sending the material back, and then another communication comes after a week. But despite that, people were inventing things much faster than what we are doing today.
Right. And so this particular area of Barkatpura was where they quarantined people that flew in from Britain into India, and they were containing diseases that they may have carried. And that is how the Ronald Ross Institute also came about, because it was specializing in malaria and malarial research. And it's very fascinating, the stories that you tell through the book.
Right. Thanks. I think great that you noticed, and many others also point out that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. So the book is about science, but also about public narrative, policy, politics. Was this a conscious decision on your part to make it about much more than what is the technical science involved?
Absolutely not. It was not a conscious decision. In fact, when I started writing the book, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the book, it was only a curiosity which led me to write the book. I was finishing my first book, and working with a healthcare consultant, and during the COVID period, I was trying to read for myself, understand for myself as to how vaccines evolved in India, or did India have a role in vaccine research? So that's when I realized that there's a lot happened in India, but nobody has bothered to document it, even after two centuries. And I tried to piece together, and then that effort led to a project of a book, and then publishers showed interest, and then that got into writing the book. But I was only thinking to document it as a history. And while writing history, I mean, I've never had any experience of writing history. So when I started writing history, then I realized that you can't write history just with the facts. You need to know. You need to have science. You need to have politics. And in fact, when I started weaving the science behind that, then I realized that there's a lot of politics involved in it. So I had to bring in politics. Then, as I moved into politics, and I had to bring in the public policy part of it, regulations and regulatory system, and then eventually I also realized that the new and emerging technologies need to be told. So it went from one to another, and it was only I was only starting to work with the history, but it went to many other phases, and it was very accidental, right?
And following on Ameer's answer, Dr. Reddy, I wanted to ask you, in your journey, which part of vaccine development taught you more? Was it the science, or was it the manufacturing? Was it navigating the labyrinth of politics? You tell us.
Namaste. Her question is, what is that I learned from my journey? Science, politics, and manufacturing. I am an electronics engineer. I do not belong to life sciences domain. So, science part, my team has taken care of it. I made a good team of scientists who are committed to the purpose, not only to science, to the country. They should have the respect for their own motherland, and it is a question of making it for ourselves, self-sufficiency, self-reliance. That is the motto. So when I imbibed this kind of thinking in them, and who responded to that favorably, I recruited only those scientists, because I can't judge their science by interview. I can't ask them the right questions in science. And I saw their attitude, whether they are committed to the nation or not. Such kind of people only I recruited. They were handling science part. Of course, I have to handle them also. The reason is they are very sensitive, very sensitive. They are curious, and sometimes they are in anxiety mode because they are working on an unknown thing. They want to discover, or they have to research. So very difficult to handle with them. I can't force them for timelines. At the same time, I have to answer to the institutions, financial institutions and investors. It is a tightrope walking to deal with the scientists without knowing science. And that taught me a lot how to deal with different variant natures, different attitudes, but goal is same. Everyone approaches in a different way. I learned how to deal with human beings with science temperament. Second, manufacturing. I am talking about the Shanta initiative in 1992, October 93. In those days, no biopharma company in the country. Not many people have hands-on experience. And not only that, when we want to do something, the equipment required for manufacturing biologicals was not available in the country. We had to import. When we had to import, okay, we can import. The irrationality in the government policies, a finished product is coming into the country without any duty under the name that this vaccine is very life-saving, so no duty on that. Traders used to import it duty-free. They were putting their margins and selling at very abnormal cost. So country is losing its revenue. But when I wanted to do the same vaccine, which is life-saving in their definition, the equipment I require, it attracts 78% duty. How do you justify it? When I want to import any biological material, reactives, whatever it is, they used to charge 85% duty. It is not fair. At one end, we want to have self-sufficiency, we want to develop our own vaccine. We are importing into the country without any duty, finished product. When I want to manufacture the same product, I have to end up paying duties on equipment, on the consumables, on the reactants, everything. So my manufacturing experience is not very good. I was fighting with the government. Finally, some scheme has come under ECG scheme, export commitment. If you promise so much of export is possible, they give some concession. That too, from 78% to 25%. Not fully taken out. So it was very difficult time. Most of the equipment today, after 30 years, I think at least 60-70% of the equipments are being locally manufactured. In those days, everything has to be imported, including pipettes. You know, from CCMB. Talk about anything regarding biologicals because there is no necessity for the country and it was not produced here. And not many people were using it also, except some central lab like CCMB or Central University of Hyderabad. Such kind of institutes only were importing, and none of the industry was importing these things. It was a very difficult time for me to cope up for manufacturing needs, the filling machines, the automated filling lines, all these things we had to import. So it was a tough time, but we could go through. That was my experience of knowing how many things we have to do in the country. In COVID time, we realized even masks also have to be produced here locally, otherwise we were importing everything. So any crisis will make you learn more things, and manufacturing activity in Sharda given scope for others to follow the same, and that is also one experience. The last one is politics. If I am allowed to say this, in our country, less science, more politics. Everything you have to deal with the politician or bureaucrat. Bureaucrats will take the shelter that there is no policy here. When we go and approach the politician, he doesn't understand science because people who are at the helm of affairs, they are not that educated, or in fact, most of them are not educated. They don't understand science. Their priorities are different. They never believe that country can progress by science, by knowledge. We have to have a knowledge society that can create more opportunities for the people to develop in every aspect. That will create wealth. That wealth can be evenly distributed. Such kind of thinking they don't have. They have the very shortcut method of distributing everything freebies. They get votes. They don't spend much money on science or development. Most of the time their money goes for freebies. So no budget. The two major setbacks in this country are education and health, Vaidhyam. It was very difficult time for me to deal with the bureaucrats and politicians. When I started this, there was no pharmacopoeia mentioning the recombinant DNA hepatitis B vaccine. There were no protocols for how to test it, how to accept it. When I was requesting Ministry of Health for this, they say that meet Health Minister, he has to form a committee for this. Then only a pharmacopoeia committee can be formed. Unless a committee is there, we can't insert recombinant DNA into pharmacopoeia. Without having a committee for almost 8 months or 9 months, fighting with the government, and I mean, fighting in the sense, going and appealing to them, they listen, they don't do anything. Follow up, second meeting, third meeting, 7 meetings. I followed up almost 2 years continuously to have a pharmacopoeia committee constituted and protocols formed for testing and accepting. So it is a Herculean task because the other side awareness is very little. One simple example I will mention, when I made an application for license to develop and produce recombinant DNA hepatitis B vaccine, the title of the application is Genetically Engineered Hepatitis B Vaccine. I made an application. It went into engineering department where they give license for lathes, machines, tools. That was the level of awareness in the year 93, 94.
Because it was part of engineering.
So I could not trace my application for 3 months, 4 months. I again applied. I could not trace it. Finally, I landed up in Udyog Bhavan, Delhi. I went through all the corridors of the Udyog Bhavan. I found some Telugu name, some Rao. I ventured to ask him, where is my application? Then he asked me the title. Based on the title, it went to engineering department. And they don't know what it is. They kept it there, that's all. I lost almost 9 months. That is the level of awareness in the country. Politicians, had they known how much angry WHO was and what they mandate they have given, that every newborn child should be vaccinated by 1997. If you don't include this into immunization schedule, we will stop all our support to you. It didn't matter to them at all. They were having a deaf ear for this. That is the my experience with the politicians. I think now things are changing. I don't know. I am not very much again in touch with them.
So safe to say the path hasn't been easy. Every door you had to open was through your own will and massive effort.
Yes.
Yes. Uh, so, you marketed the Shantavac B vaccine for just $1 back then. And I'm sure there was resistance at such low prices. But like you mentioned, things may have changed now. Do you think today we are at a place where we can still continue to produce vaccines at low cost, market them to countries who are economically poorly developed? And can we continue the legacy that you left us with?
We can do that, but see, there is no depth for intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, everything is there. This race is very ancient race. Our country's background is such. Unfortunately, the financial resources are very limited. The wrong priorities in the budget. At one time, in 93, it was 500 crores only DST budget, Department of Science and Technology, for all the sectors, not for life science alone. How much it is? It is a meager money. In those days, 93, National Science Foundation of America, they used to have annual budget of $28 billion. We are talking about 500 crores is how many dollars, I don't know. In those days, maybe 50 rupees, 45 rupees. Say 100 million. Pathetic situation. We never believed in investing in science and technology. Now they increased it. They say that they increased it. Now they call it 1,27,000 crores. Good. But unfortunately, in that, for R&D, majority portion is coming from government, going to their CSIR labs. Unfortunately, in the CSIR labs, excellent scientists are there. I am not doubting that. But there is no mandate given to them to make a product or a service. They do basic research, they publish papers, they present it in international forums, get back to motherland, get promotions. But there is no output, tangible output useful for society. 70% is from them and 30% is only from private sector. In that 30% also, not 33%, Tata's majority, 58% of the R&D budget is coming from Tata's and automobiles. Where is money for life sciences? This scenario should change. And incubation centers are very essential. Many people have ideas. Startup companies are coming, bright people are coming. They have excellent ideas. But to get started, in this country, no incubation centers. In 93, when we were dwelling with the subject, there were hardly some 30, 40 incubation centers. At the time, in China, it was 300. Now, China has 4,000 incubation centers. We have 350. We have done progress from 30 to 300, but that is not enough. That is not enough. It should not be arithmetical progression, it should be geometric progression. Unless we change our mindset, this country has to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, especially now with the Trump attitude, with tariff war. It should give us a wake-up call that we should be self-sufficient for ourselves. Why we should depend on them? We have everything here except resources. If you divert some of the defense budget, 50% of it, thinking of some danger from a neighboring country, of small country, majority, 70% of the budget is going to defense. Buying so many aircrafts. In future, nobody is going to fight with big aircrafts or war airplanes. It's all like this kind of, we should be prepared for it. COVID has not given us any lessons, unfortunately. We are still carrying on the same kind of budgeting wrongly. If budgeting is there, proper budgeting is there, hand-holding is there for the startup companies, we can definitely be developing our own vaccines. No doubt on that.
Sure. Thank you. Ameer, you were writing in the book about how vaccine development is is a public health enterprise. You're doing something for the good of the public. But as more and more vaccine manufacturers arrived on scene in India, knowing that India is a boiling pot of melting pot of many diseases, it resembled more a theater of political influence, where pharmaceutical giants were using instruments like electoral bonds, and they were securing political favor, and as a result, their particular vaccines were being sold in the market or sold at reduced prices. Is there any safeguard? I mean, of course, today we don't have electoral bonds anymore. They've been deemed unconstitutional since 2024. But are there any other safeguards in place to insulate public health from political capture and that of corporate capture?
Yeah, in fact, I must start with Varaprasad Reddy Garu's story. It's a great story. In fact, in the book, I called it Shantar story, the beautiful story. It was very surprising for us, for anyone who's looking at it, especially after 2 decades, 3 decades, for a man with no knowledge about hepatitis B vaccine to jump into the cauldron and with no support from anywhere, from nobody was supporting from the US or from the Western Hemisphere on technology, and he had no funding. In fact, he was going around selling his. In fact, the book I mentioned about selling the family silver. In fact, he sold land, sold his ancestral property to raise the fund. It was a hell of a risk this man was taking. An amazing job. 30 years ago, almost about. And the good part was that he turned out to be a great successful story. And obviously there must be so many other failure stories which we are not reading about it, writing about it. But I think this one stands out. And in the process, in his story, he fought with every system in the country. Be it political system, be it regulatory system, be it business systems, the domestic business system, the multinational giants, another system, and the social systems, the pricing, which was another thing which you mentioned at the beginning. When the same vaccine which is manufactured by the multinational companies were selling as 2,000 plus rupees, he started selling at 50 rupees. And in the first draft, when I was writing the book, in the first draft, I called him a communist. Not because he was, a communist himself, but he said, no, I'm not a communist, don't call me a communist. You call me a socialist. I have socialist ideals, but I'm not a communist. The man went about doing much more than what is needed for a business to succeed. Obviously, the pricing was one aspect which I found it very interesting. Another aspect was, in the process, he was not bothered about the equity part of it. In fact, most of the startups, entrepreneurs today, they're very shy about, giving out. If, they will first try to dilute 1%, 2%. In the first tranche, he was diluting 50% of his equity, which is unheard of even at that point in time. So, and that is another interesting thing which I found. And the third part of it is he was also distributing shares to his employees. Whoever is doing some good things, he said, okay, you take this. And he was able to retain good talent because of that. Because of and despite being a non-science person. So this is a unparalleled story in our history. And there's another story which I'm describing in the book is about GP Talwar's story. But GP Talwar never became a business entrepreneur. He continued with his science innovations and science journey. So therefore, I think this is an unparalleled story which we need to celebrate again and again. For the new generations to come and to learn lessons from his own success and also his failures. And he had many failures, which he's talking about. I also mentioned something in his book. So it's a great point. And sorry, I missed.
Question on public policies in place so that we insulate
Yeah.
public
So
health.
yeah. So I get it. So there is many safeguards which we need to work on at the moment. There aren't any. One is, I think we need to have a lot of transparency in the entire process. We have also, again, I need to mention Hyderabad because Hyderabad is the vaccine capital of the country. And most of the activities, almost about 70% of the vaccine activities, even today, happens out of the city. And there were good parts and there were bad parts. In fact, Reddy garu also had to fight with some of the local manufacturers who were, trying to not just beat the regulators, but also take advantage of the lack of systems in our country, regulatory systems in our country. So I think strengthening the regulators is, another area where we can safeguard the systems. We have regulators, but that regulators are far from meeting the very basic requirements. And political indifference, and of course, politics will continue to play a role. Again, in the time of Reddy garu also there were political pressures. Obviously he had to work with both the camps, and Chandrababu Naidu's gang and the Congress gang to say, continue with this business. And he will, if he's open, he will talk about it. But that's evolved. And today, if you look at it, has become an entirely different game. You need to be subservient to a political group to survive your business in the country. So I don't know if you ask me whether there is an end to that, and how do we? I have no answer to that. And you may in a real regulated system, that should not be the case. If a proper regulatory system is in place, that should not be you don't have to be subservient to political systems. But I think that we can. I mean, I can give you a list of safeguards which we can bring it on. But I think we need to bring it a lot of safeguards to ensure that the businesses, the innovation get translated into businesses.
For sure, more is needed. Agreed, completely. Okay, so shifting gears, I want to ask you a provocative question. After the global eradication of smallpox, so today the world has been declared free of smallpox virus, and the live virus stock, however, was retained in only 2 labs across the world, one in US and one in Russia. And all other stocks across any laboratory in the world were destroyed. So since then, there's been an ongoing debate about what to do with virus stocks, not only of smallpox, but any other virus which can cause infection. So there are proponents of destroying these viruses. They say that there's a risk of accidental or even deliberate release of these viruses. And then there are others who say that no, we need these viruses because we need to study the evolution of viruses. They have a lot of scientific value in general. So where do you think each of you positions yourself? Should we destroy these virus stocks, or what should we do with these?
The science without humanity, very dangerous. What is happening is people are developing science not to save the humanity, how to attack humanity. They are holding it for the purpose of making, I was telling you, future wars are not going to be with MiG aircrafts. It's going to be biological wars. That could be one of the weapons for them. That is one side of a ring. Another side of a ring, I will tell you. A multinational company got into Shanta. There's a rule. When you can't beat enemy, join the enemy and kill it. Venupotu, in Telugu, people may understand. So in Shanta, a multinational company has come in. 10 years they enjoyed. They listened to me. That is the agreement between us. After 10th year, they have their own way. In the process, their job is done here. When there is a change in the guard in multinational company there, the new chairman decided we don't need Indian operations. They sold it, they killed all the starting material for the vaccines. They sold it fine. They could have sold along with the vaccine material so that we can continue. The new buyer will continue the operations. They didn't want this to continue. They don't want this competition. So what we were producing, 14 vaccines were all removed. They were autoclaved. Meaning, Shanta once again have to start ab initio. It will take 3 or 4 years. 3, 4 years, they enjoy the freedom of no competition. This is one type of danger. And the other danger is they are holding smallpox virus at two epicenters
locations,
of
yes.
power. Whenever they want to make a weapon on it, they can make it. At one end, they don't allow you to have your own vaccines in the country. We have developed it. We got licenses for it. We have done everything. We sold. People got used to it. Suddenly, all the 14 vaccines are out of market, out of shelf. It's not a threat to this community, humanity. So these kind of things are happening. Why they happen? We are signatories to 2005 GATT agreement. Globalization. Where is globalization now? Every country has its own rules formed. Tariffs are coming where from? Are we abiding by 2005 GATT agreements? No. No free trade. I can't sell there. They can come here because we need it. We are not self-sufficient. It's one-way traffic. Government should have backbone. As long as you depend on some foreign sources, you have to bend your back. The only remedy is change the mindset of our leaders or change of leaders as such, who believe in self-sufficiency, self-reliance. That is the only way.
No, I think the reason, the logic behind keeping these vaccine stock is apparently to have laboratory purpose, the research purpose. But remember, the eradication of smallpox was not an entire effort of US or USSR. It was a global effort. In fact, many of the third world countries, like the global south, took a very active role in eradicating the virus, the smallpox virus. And it was, decades of effort, hard effort that went into in eradicating the virus from its spread. As Reddy Garu mentioned, this is there is no need, there's no purpose it's going to be served by keeping the virus stock in two institutes with two global powers. It's a only can be used as a weapon. And in today's world, when we have this quantum computings and all kinds of artificial intelligence and modeling and kinds of stuff, I don't think we still need to keep it for any kind of future genomic purpose or any other kind of purpose. Those all been done, whether understanding the virus to any extent, that's already been done. So the only purpose for keeping this virus, smallpox virus and many other viruses, which as we move on with the eradication efforts, we will have a list of viruses which needs to be, the question will come on what to do with this virus. And someone will keep a stock on that and say that I can revive it any point in time and attack the humanity. So I think my opinion is all these viruses which have been eradicated, there is no need to keep it, and gradually once it's done its scientific purposes, it should be entirely destroyed.
It seems like it's a humanitarian decision, but clearly it is not. There are many shades of gray, and a lot of it has to do with monopoly. So, great learning session for us. Any questions from the audience that we could take?
Yeah. Hi. So post-COVID, the importance of vaccines has been demonstrated quite apparently throughout the world. And now a lot of international coalitions like WHO and CP are preparing for future pandemics. So like, something like pathogen X. And there's something called the 100-day program, 100-day, mission where if you find a new pathogen, you want to make a new vaccine against it in 100 days. Be fast mobilization against the pandemic. Is India, with its massive manufacturing capacity and indigenous solutions, also a part of such ambitious projects? And what is your thought about? Because India has a big public health need, and we would need something like that in the future, in future pandemics.
I'll just briefly answer and then pass it on to you people. In fact, in the book, my book Vaccination, I'm talking about a vaccine which is developed in India in the 50s in 4 months. It's a viral vaccine, and it did succeed, and it was deployed for use in India. Influenza vaccine. So 100-day mission, not just in India but in across the world. We're hearing about 100-day missions. I think it's possible, and also with the current development of technology, not just the biological technology I'm talking about, but even the computer technology of understanding the molecule in a brief period of time. Those are fast progress today. So I think the mission is not impossible, but at the same time, as a country, we certainly need to catch up with some of those global initiatives, whether be it CEPI or but of course, I have my own reservations about many of these global organizations, which again I'm talking about in this book. You must read about it. So many of these global organizations are not there to serve your purpose. They are there to serve the purpose of their paymasters. So you need to be careful about that. Oh.
Yes, it is possible to do development, especially now with AI coming in. Screening is much faster, filtering is very fast. We can develop. But after developing it, we have to test it. Quite number of tests are there. They will take time. You can't cut the time. You can cut the time in development. For example, a vaccine is after developing, we have to test it for its shelf life. How long it will be able to maintain its potency in the shelf. And we have tested for stability, sterility. All these tests, they take, some of the vaccines we tested for 3 years, 2.5 years. Without testing it, we launched a COVID vaccine. You know how many repercussions are there? Almost companies like Pfizer being sued. Luckily, in India, there is no such kind of potency to file a legal suit on companies. We don't do that. Our samskara is that. All our vaccines are, they have done a wonderful job. I salute them. We refuse to do that because of the same reason. Unless it is tested for 3 years, we can't launch it. That is essential to test it. Our COVID vaccines were all not tested, given away to the emergency mode. I am not blaming. We have all used it, including me. But some of the people are getting reactions. From the Pfizer vaccine, 43% of the expectant mothers lost their babies. They sued them. These vaccines, doing is easy. To make it safer is much more difficult, and also it has to be established they are safe. To establish that it is safe and efficacious, 3 years' time is required. 100 days mission may be for epidemics, pandemic situations, but it should not be the rule of the day. We should not go into that mode that in 100 days we should develop a vaccine. No, we can develop, but it has to be tested before using it.
Absolutely. I think, the trials which we talk about from phase 1 till phase 3 and even phase 4, which is for generating further data on marketing. So those are absolutely necessary before deploying it. You can develop it in 100 days, but testing is more important to understand the long-term side effects. Of course, the shell life and stability and so on and so forth, right?
Our COVID vaccines are not tested. We are all at risk. Let me tell you that.
You know, this discussion really brings me really in the mid of my next question. We saw that many of the views that both of you have had are contrary, but yet you find a common mid. And so I wanted to ask, COVID was a time when we saw so many scientific opinions playing out in the open. People talking on different forums about these things, those who are knowledgeable as well as those who are not so knowledgeable. But then about other things in to do with public health, do you think that there are comparable spaces for talking openly about science and discussing rigorous scientific discussions or even meetings? What has been your experience like? Is this HLF the only space where we are going to talk about science in public space? Or do you think that there are going to be more such avenues where common man will be able to hear what scientists and others have to say?
Common man may not listen to the discussions between policy makers and scientists or industry, but at least there should be a strong dialogue, handshake between academia and industry. Normally, everywhere it is norm that knowledge is created at the universities level. They develop the concept, and it is their duty to give it a proof of concept also. Then they should transfer it to industry. Industry is only to scale it up, commercialize it. Unfortunately, our universities, they do not have VCs in place, they don't have budgets, and most of the faculty, they are resigning and going away because they are not being paid salaries. Pathetic situation where the knowledge has to emanate, those universities have become most teethless. At least some public institutions are there, like CSR Labs, CCMB. They have funds, they are running well. There should be interaction between industry and such institutions. A participation should be there, a joint development should be there. They have pool of knowledge. They have done a lot of basic research. They know what not to be done. Thomas Alva Edison, when he was inventing bulb, he was successful at the 1000th time. He has given a statement, 999 times I failed. This is the good data for future scientists. They should not try these methods. That kind of knowledge is available from the public domain. Those public institutions should coordinate with industry. They should transfer their ideas. They should transfer their experiences. They should tell them, don't do this way. It will not work. We have done it already. That kind of experience they should impart to industry. Then industries can catch up very fast. Their research time will be reduced. In a way, they are not spending much money. In India, the average companies, they are spending 0.3 to 0.4% of their revenues. Only Tatas are spending 78%. Only Tatas, none else. So in such circumstances, anyway, CSR labs have a lot of funds, good scientists, pool is there, they have good experience. They should impart knowledge to, if not universities, they should collaborate with industry, they should transfer whatever their experience. I am not asking to transfer technology or I am not asking any product to them, but their experiences, that will solve. I have great experience with CCMB. Our scientists worked in the initial days at CCMB. A scientific ambience has given a lot of impetus to our scientists. Not that you have given any technology, but that environment has enthused our scientists to work. That kind of collaboration is required between the public institutions and industry. And common man, they need only result. They cannot participate in the discussions. It's politics, not necessary for them.
In fact, today, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we are in a great democracy of information. We have a lot of information, on anything. We've a lot of small videos moving around in Instagram and YouTube, and 99% of those informations are absolutely crap. And because of this democratization of information, anyone can make take a video, phone and record something and put it out there. And in olden days, when you're looking for some information, there used to be these channels whether it is in newspapers or Doordarshan, those kind of and channels, and the information which we receive through those channels, some of them are very respected, very reputable, like Times of India or Hindu those days. It's like a gospel of truth, and we just used to blindly believe that. But today, even the same newspapers, they whatever they carry, we take it with pinch of salt, and we go and dig deeper and try to find out the actual fact and evidence behind that. So it's come to a different era altogether in a span of 30 years, and the democratization of information has not done anything great to the real facts coming out and people discussing about the facts. And you talked about debating between the academia, the scientists, the people. I think there is a space. In fact, in the political system, if you were hinting about that, it's little difficult. Of course, it is a bit difficult for openly, freely talking about what we need and what is correct, what not to be done, those kind of things. So one need to be a little careful what to talk, what not to talk. But at the same time, I also would ask people to talk, because as citizen, we have a duty to talk about what we feel is right. Whether it is, and more so in science, because science, someone can't make a fool out of you. Science is fact. So when you're talking about fact, you don't have to worry about anything. So little scary times, but I think people need to talk about it. Forget about the Insta, YouTube videos, but when you're talking about facts, you certainly need to disseminate. That's your duty. If you have some information, and there's the only way you can satisfy yourself is to disseminate to others.
Yeah, sure.
An extension to his talk and also our question, public should be involved in these kind of discussions. I think public should be aware of the history. This book, kindly go through that. It has given most palatable issues, unpalatable issues also. There is science, there is politics, there is so much of deceit also written in this. So this gives a picture to the common man or citizen how a science or how a product is evolving through so many circles, through government circles, bureaucratic circles, industrial circles, institutions, who have played what their role, whether they played their role properly or not. That part is very essential for the common man to know. That will empower them to decide what is right for the country, what is not right for the country, which institution is doing service to them, which institution is doing disservice to them, which politician has taken a proper decision, proper call for the nation, and that is important information for the people to elect their own leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We need this kind of people who, they don't mind, they didn't mince words. What is truth he has written. Not many people write that way. They write it so because they don't want to be blamed by anybody. I think he has the guts to face it when anybody questions them. He has written all the truths. I am thrilled to read that.
I think this was a worthy end to our conversation here. Just one last question, perhaps? Yeah, one. We can take it.
This is Srinu. We see a lot of debate on vaccine in our social media about it is so much vaccines we are giving to children nowadays. It is not even required. Like that debate is happening. Is it really we are giving more vaccines to children? Recently in US banned so many vaccines too, right? They cut down to 13 vaccines to children, right? Is it any corporate motto is in that making vaccine more than what we are giving to children, or else it is a really we are giving what it is needed?
He's asking us, do we really need to vaccinate children according to the immunization schedule? Or is there some kind of a political corporate motive behind vaccinating children? Yeah.
Yeah, are we over vaccinated? No, I think we need to trust our country. I think the national immunization schedule that is prepared after a lot of discussion and debates. In fact, in one of my first meetings with Dr. V.K. Paul, I was asking the same question as you rightly mentioned. Are you sure that all these vaccines which we are putting in the national immunization schedule is absolutely necessary for the children? So that's when we sat down and started discussing about how the process is arrived. A lot of feedback from the pediatricians. Indian Pediatric Society is Indian Pediatric Society is taken. A lot of discussions, debates goes on. Of course, there are people who try to bring in their vaccines and try to include in the national schedule. And if you ask me honestly, is there pressure to include a new vaccine? I could say that it is not that easily possible. But what happens is in the procurement, at the stage of procurement, the national immunization vaccines are procured at large scale by Government of India and then supplied to in some cases the state governments also. And of course, there's when we were supported by UNICEF was purchasing and giving. So the real lobbying actually happens at those levels, at the procurement level. Once the vaccine is included in the schedule, and then someone comes and tells the government or pays a bribe to the official who is responsible for procuring to pick up certain vaccines. So those things happen. But at least I want to trust my government that the vaccines they are putting in the schedule is amply tested, tried, evaluated, testified. But of course, there are other cases like the HPV vaccine and few other vaccines. Yeah, so there are debates. Yeah, debates going around it. So and also you need to be. I mean, what I'm seeing as a trend in some cases is over and above the national immunization schedule vaccine. Parents are trying to over-vaccinate their children to protect them from any future diseases. So that's when this things goes wrong, and they want to give everything, a damn vaccine available around the world to ensure that the kid doesn't get any disease in the future. So
blaming the parents is in fact the vaccine industry, certain parts of it, who want to see this kind of thing propagated, and they're giving cocktails of 5 vaccines to absolutely newborn children, and parents are resisting and they're being threatened because they're being told, we don't know if you will come back. It's almost as though they wish to capture them. We would like to trust, and we're not stupid, by the way. We can understand, we can read your research papers and take our own call on what you're doing, because we know that you're not always very straight in what decisions you inflict on us.
Right, and in fact, most of the people who are sitting in this room are able to evaluate ourselves, but a majority, 90% to 70, at least 70% of our Indian population are not able to do that. I think they will have to depend on what the government advises. If the government says this is to be vaccinated, the people use that. So it needs to be evaluated at least at the educated parents level.
But trust is somewhat diminishing, and you should deal with that, because we will also take our own call if we don't trust you.
True.
I think this should be an open discussion, and I hope the government also encourages this in the future. Thank you all very much.